In this devotional, I'm going to share with you 3 thoughts from 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 3 through 7, where I'll ask the question, what should we watch out for? 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 3 through 7 says, "As I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus, so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine, nor to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which promote speculations rather than the stewardship from God, that is by faith. The aim of our charge is love, that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Certain persons, by swerving from these, have wandered away into vain discussion, desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding either what they are saying or the things about which they make confident assertions." Paul writes to Timothy and he says, Timothy, you got to be on the lookout. You have got to be on the lookout for folks that are not primarily interested in the gospel. You've got to be on the lookout for these folks who are interested in other things, the nitpicky, the erudite, the exciting, the intellectual. You got to be on the lookout for these things, because what so frequently will happen is people will be distracted by that which is secondary rather than devoting themselves fully to the beautiful gospel of Jesus Christ. So here are 3 thoughts from 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 3 through 7, answering the question, what should we watch out for? Thought number 1, different doctrine. First and foremost, we need to watch out for somebody who is teaching other than the gospel. You have to watch out for that. There are many people who will come into the church and they will have the appearance, they will have the sound, they will have the look of somebody who is a faithful believer, but ultimately they are trying to teach you something other than the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when Paul explains this to Timothy, he says, when people are coming to you and they're teaching something other than what I taught you, you need to be on the lookout for that. You need to make sure that you can identify it, and identify it quickly, because there are all sorts of folks who have the appearance of believers, but who ultimately are trying to undermine that beautiful message of Jesus Christ, Him crucified and resurrected. Thought number 2, myths. Paul tells Timothy, don't get caught up in the folks who are interested in myths and genealogies. He's telling them, there are folks who are going to be so interested in their lineage and where they come from, and they will use it as a means to have authority or significance within the church. You got to pay attention to that. You got to look out for it. At the same time, there are folks who are going to use the myths or the cultural tradition that the people around you adhere to. They're going to try and use that to corrupt the gospel. You got to be on the lookout for that. What Timothy was dealing with were people who were trying to utilize their traditions, trying to utilize the things that they were brought up with to influence the teaching of the church. And when that happens, the church has to be on guard. They have to be looking out for those who would corrupt the gospel message with that which is maybe traditional, or that which is mythological, or that which is historical, but historical from another perspective. And myths can creep into the church even today. So we have to be on guard against those myths, against those devotions to genealogies, against those devotions to traditions. We have to be on guard against those things when they are counter to the teaching of Christ. Thought number 3, abuse of the law. Ultimately, these folks that Paul tells Timothy to watch out for are those who neither understand the law nor understand Jesus' fulfillment of the law, and they are abusing the law to their own purpose, to their own gain. We have to watch out for those who would abuse the law, both for those who would say that the law isn't binding, so I can do whatever it is that I want to do. That's the antinomian, the one who says there is no longer any law to which I must adhere. But there is also a warning against those who would try and say, you must follow and adhere to and put your faith in the law. That your fulfillment of the law is how you are reconciled to God. That is also a corruption. That's the corruption of legalism. And Paul just points out to Timothy that you have to be on the lookout for those who would abuse the law in one way or the other. But instead, you must recognize that the purpose of the law is to point out the beauty and glory of Jesus Christ, explaining how he is the fulfillment of all of the promises of God, including the law and the prophets. These three thoughts come from the assigned reading of 1 Timothy chapters 1 through 3. If you'd like to read through the Bible with me, you can do so by subscribing to this channel, by clicking on the link in the description, or by joining the Facebook group Through the Bible, where we are reading the text of Scripture together.